Hello, how are you guys today? This is Nana Judy's Homeschooling and Bible Thoughts, and today is part two of Let's Talk About Math. Last time I showed you a whole lot about Saxon Math. I told you its history, I showed you the consumable and the non consumable, and I talked extensively about my daughter using it all the way through algebra. She graduated valedictorian. Math has never been an issue with her. Today, I'm going to skip three of my grandsons and go to the last one. Now, actually, I have six grandchildren. They're all gifted. Uh, but two of them I've never homeschooled. So I'm going to stick with the four that's in the town where I live that I have some time or other um, homeschooled. And if you watched episode one, you got to see the oldest. And we talked about the mini me of him being Toby, the youngest. So I'm going to tell you real quickly about Toby. He was born prematurely. He had quite a few issues with health, had to have early surgery uh, before he was even a year old. And we were so caught up in his health issues that we weren't paying attention to his brain issue being smart, that how he compensated for all the issues he had that possibly an average child wouldn't have. We were just overprotective about the physical things and helping him all the time. And he is going to be the last born, so he's my daughter's baby, and she loves babies. So he lived up to being a baby, okay? And so when she went back to college, she'd been a realtor, had already gotten her business degree, but she saw her firstborn getting into acting and how it changed his life and what the theater teacher did for him so much that she wanted to impact people like that. So she went back to college, and I was already helping her homeschool her son number three at that point. One and two were in public school, had gone back out of homeschooling. And so number three was homeschooling. And there's 3 years difference in each boy from the one right beneath them. So when it was kindergarten uh, for Toby, then that would have put Nikki at third grade. Okay. And we took Nikki out of public school at the middle of second grade. I'll tell you his story some other time. So, anyway, kindergarten. No, there's 4 years difference between each boy. Yeah. So, because when AJ is a freshman, Jordan was a senior. So that would be, yeah, three full grades. So when Toby started kindergarten, Nikki was in third grade. He had been homeschooling a half a year by then. Okay, somehow that doesn't seem right, but that's how it was. And I was more intent on homeschooling Nikki and doing it right because he was identified as gifted in first grade. And that was part of the reason we had to pull him out of school was um, he was spending his day under his desk trying to stay out of trouble because he finished his work for the day real quickly. And so there's a long story goes with that. But anyway, so I wanted to be sure I did him justice. I didn't want to do what the public school was doing to him, just flooding him with worksheets that wasn't teaching him anything. So Toby, we figured we'd homeschooled his whole life due to health problems. And so we had plenty of time to homeschool him. We could go slower with him. We sure didn't want to over exhaust him because he has so many issues. One being his leg turns out and he walks like Chester and Gunsmoke. He had a speech impediment. He has visual issues. quite a few things were going on. So I used the color math that my daughter was using had already used with her boys when they were homeschooling uh, their younger grades. So if she had it, it was free, might as well use it, right? Kindergarten. Well, it's called color math, but it's put about out by McRuffy, and that's what she used for reading also. I didn't write them. I used a program that was a teacher created. She guaranteed at the end of the lessons he'd be reading. It came with a bunch of little readers. It had a audio tape that played songs for each sound of the letter, and it had little cards you punched out and put these little stands made like little puppets for each letter, and each letter was an animal, and it was just a fun thing to do with him. And he could just spend hours with those little cards down in the floor, matching them with the letters of the alphabet. And every time we were in the car, we'd play the music. So that was what I used for reading, but then I used that McRuffy's Color Math for math, and man, it was really good. It came with the resource kit. The manipulatives were very similar to what Saxon had, so I had two sets of manipulatives then, because I bought them when I was homeschooling in the summers. My own children, and had kept them over the years, and used them in my private school that I taught at, and added to them because I had 27 students, and so I needed more of them. So I added to them. So I had lots of manipulatives. I didn't even need to buy any more, but I did get the new resource kit. And we did math a little bit each day. It had lots of 100 charts, a lot of counting. And what I'd do was the counting was like he would count by ones to something. Then as he got better, that would add count by tens to 100, forward and back, then by fives, then by twos. And I would take him outside while Nicky did some of his work inside. And Toby and I would practice walking, holding hands and walking, because he needed a lot of practice at walking. And he would count. So we would count to our goal in steps, and then backwards back to the house and come in, and then he'd get down the floor and play with manipulatives, and I'd give him something from the book to do, and he did it. He loved it. He loved the math. I It still didn't hit me that he was way far ahead of anybody else. He was just enjoying math. He was enjoying reading. But by the end of that year, he was doing great in math, and I could see it took him way past kindergarten math. It had been a great program, and when I went and got a first grade math book, half of it he'd already had. He didn't need it again. I looked at several math programs, and they uh, none of them was as far advanced as he was in kindergarten color math. So what I decided to do was buy a first grade workbook that came in two books. I mean, the curriculum was consumable. It came in two books, and I would let him skip the first book. And I just put him in the second semester because I knew he knew that first one, because that color math had covered that already. And so I would let him work in that book because I knew it wasn't really anything hard. And I just put it in front of him and say, work as many as you can. I'm going to go work with Nikki. When I get through with Nikki, any problems or any issues you have, we'll go over them. You know, if there's a concept you didn't understand. He said, okay, okay. So he did it. He never said he had any trouble. And I stuck with Nikki, giving him one-on-one, to be sure that the gifted kid wasn't feeling like he was just bored stiff out of his mind. We challenged him. And then, though, I got that Color Math Company's McRuffy's kindergarten reading program because I could see he had not picked up the reading from that other program that guaranteed it would work. Oh, he knew the sounds of the letters, but they didn't really teach how to put the blend the letters together. And so I thought, well, I'm having many years with him. We'll just go slower on reading. So I ordered the kindergarten from McRuffy and started using it. And his reading just started going. He's picked up quickly. It had spelling in it, had reading, it had language arts, had everything I needed. So I really, really liked it. And then uh, math, though, he wasn't being challenged at all. And one day he came in to me 2 weeks after school started, and he said, "I'm through." And I said, "Well, you can work ahead if you want to." He said, "No, I'm through with the book." And I said, "You're through with the second first grade workbook?" "Yeah, I finished it." And I thought, I bet he didn't do it right. I said, "Well, tonight I'll grade it and I'll let you know what we'll do tomorrow then." He said, "Okay." Well, that night I graded it. He made 100 all the way through. He he finished the second half of first grade in 2 weeks. And I'm like, "Ooh, what do I do now?" So I got my second grade. No, I went and bought a second grade book like that first grade. And one day he put his head down and just like he was banging it. And I said, "What's wrong?" He said, "When are they going to give me something I can learn? It's just stuff I already know." And I thought, well, I've got Saxon upstairs when we used with my son that we never got through. Maybe I should get the Saxon book out. So I went and got the Saxon book, and Saxon has a placement test you can give. And uh, I didn't test him at that moment. Later on, I did, but at this moment, I looked and I saw things and that he could do, and I said, "Okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do Saxon. We're going to do every lesson. I'm just not going to make you do the back of the page. You just go at your own pace, and I will teach you from the teacher's book, and we'll go at your pace. You're going to spend an hour a day on math, and if you can do one lesson, that's fine. If you can do three, we'll do three. But we'll get it to where you're learning something and not bored." He said, "Okay." So I had to really then start teaching two boys, really teaching. But, when I was in private school, I taught 27 at once. So I could handle two boys, right? At this point, I was starting to see he was probably gifted too, and when he put his head down and said, "When are they going to start teaching me anything else?" I said, "Toby, you're 6 and you're doing the work of a 7, 8-year-old. I don't think they anticipated that you would be as good at 6. And so it will get harder. You will start learning eventually." "Okay, well, let's just work at your pace. We'll catch up to whatever you need." And he just started zipping through that book. And I could see that he was going to finish it by Christmas. From the 1st of September to Christmas, he was going to finish Saxon's second grade book. So I went to visit my brother one week, and I was telling him about him. And my brother is really good at math. He's a builder. He graduated from Texas University and with a business, and he started out in mechanical engineering. And so I really respect him. He's highly successful. And he said, "Does he multiply?" I said, "He's 6. Of course he doesn't multiply." He said, "If he's doing the things you're telling me he's doing, he may already know how to multiply." I said, "How could he learn? No one's taught him." He said, "I don't know, but maybe he does." So what we do is we would adopt a lot in a new housing addition, and every day go look and see what they were doing. We would follow that lot through the leveling it, the putting the forms in for concrete, the plumbing, the pouring the concrete. We'd follow each step every morning, every afternoon. And in the morning, what are they doing now? Okay, in the afternoon, how much did they get done? So it was just a few blocks from his house, and we would drive over there and we would look. And so they were getting pretty close to this house being ready to work inside of it. They had it framed, they had the roof on, the siding, the brick had been done. And so as I told Nikki, I said, I think he can multiply. Nikki said, Nana, he's 6. He can't multiply. Even I wasn't multiplying at age 6. I said, no, but Brandon was. Brandon was doing algebra. That's my grandchild in Pflugerville. He was doing algebra at 5. I said, maybe Toby can multiply. So Toby's sitting in the back. Nikki's up in front with me. And I said, as we pull up to the new home, hey, Toby, do you know how they're going to know how to order carpet when they finish this house? And he said, nope. And I said, well, let's just say the room is a nice square. And I said, you know how to do perimeter. We've been doing if it's a 2 foot square, we add 2 and 2, and that gives us 4, and we add 2, and that gives us 6, and we add 2, and that gives us 8. He said, yeah. I said, well, what they will do is take 2 2s, and 2 2s is 4. And I said, that is a form of multiplication. And we would say 2 by 2. 2 by 2 is 4. Like 2, 4. And if it's 3, it's 3, 6, 9. And I said, and we would call that multiplying 3 times 3. So it's length times width. He said, oh, so if it's 10, it would be 100? And I went, yeah. And he said, if it's 5, it'd be 25. And I went, yeah. And he said, if it's 7, it'd be 36, no, 49. And I said, right. I looked at Nikki and I said, he's multiplying. He said, yeah, he sure is. And I said, now, when you say that and you get that bigger number like 100, the 10 is the root of 100. So if somebody says, what's the square root of 100? It's 10. And he said, oh, so the square root of 25 is 5. And I went, yeah. And he said, and the square root of 36 is 6. And I went, yeah. I said, he's dividing 2. So I learned you can multiply, you can divide, and now I could do square roots, all in 5 minutes. So we kind of gave him problems all the way to Sonic, because every morning we'd go by the house, and then we go to Sonic. Excuse me a minute, let me get a drink. I meant to bring that Dr. Pepper over. And so I took a video of him at Sonic. Me in the front saying, what's the square root of 49? He'd say 7. Well, he'd look out the window and go, 7. And I'd say, what's the square root of 84? 72, 84. I'd give different numbers. And he would look out the window, do something with his hands, and give me the answer. And that was like the last week of October, the first week of November. He finished his second grade book in December. And so I ordered the third grade Saxon book. Still had not given him a placement test. And actually, I did. I gave him an oral one at his house with his mother sitting there. And it showed he should be in the third or start of fourth. She said, get the third grade book. Don't miss any. Don't let him get any holes in his math. I said, okay. So I ordered the third grade book. And it got here by January. And we started third grade in January. And we got halfway through third grade in his first grade year of schooling. During that time, I don't know where to go with this. I don't want to leave anything out that might be important. We may not get to the color math today because I don't want y'all being stuck listening to me just talk about him. But I feel like you need to see him to understand what I'm going to say about the math programs. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you the rest of his story. I found out, I said, I don't understand how he jumped from the end of kindergarten to the beginning of first grade. This is very important for you guys who's got little ones who haven't started school yet. And Nikki says, well, all summer he wanted to stay locked up in his bedroom watching number blocks on Netflix. And I went, what is that? So they turned it on and we watched 3 episodes. My mind was blown. It is the greatest thing. Oh my goodness. He is mesmerized by it. We started adding that to our afternoon school. All 3 of us would go up to upstairs bedroom, sit on the bed, and watch number blocks. So there were 6 seasons by then. And by the time we got to the end of sixth season, yeah, they were multiplying, they were dividing and hinting at fractions. They had gone way past 100. The first season, they were just pretty much learning how 1 through 12 is put together. Season 2 was 13 through 24. Uh, During that time, I found out Amazon had the actual number blocks. So I got him both sets of the blocks for his birthday. And oh, he loved them. He still loves them. The numbers are gone off of them, but now they're building blocks. If he builds a barn to scale and he needs a support wall, and Magna blocks don't work for support walls, he'll build it with his cubes, his number cubes. He'll put up 2 of them, and then that way he'll have a support for his roof. He knows all about support walls and roofs. He loves to build things. So, okay. His big brother number 2 starts homeschooling with us. So now I'm divided up into 3 subjects. And knowing that I'm going to have him at home for a while, I just let him do the AP biology science with us and our history. And I wasn't getting it. It was a video, thank goodness, because it was beyond my knowledge of science. Because when I was in school, we didn't have to take biology. I took my choice in college for my science credit was archaeology. So I never had biology. So trying to teach it when you've never had it made it kind of hard. But he kept up with the big boys. We did Greek roots. He never wanted to take the test with them, but he loved to play the games with us and learn. And he was keeping up with them. And in that uh, biology, we got into the DNA, the helix, and how the ADPT is put together in them. And uh, I I wasn't able to see how those connections were made. And his grandpa, who went through medical school, was there one day, and I said, I just don't get these connections. I see 2 connections. I don't see 4. And little 6-year-old Toby said, stop the video right there. I stopped the video. And it was a picture of this molecule or of DNA. And he went up there and said, you see this? I went, yeah. He said, that's number 1 connection. You see this? That's number 2. This is number 3. This is number 4. And I looked over at the grandpa and he said, that was the hardest concept I had in medical school. And I'm like, this is a 6-year-old explaining it to me. And then uh, he also loved to do the chart of how those ADPTs were put together as partners. Again, they would challenge each other who could do the charts first, and he won as often as he lost. He could keep up with this 5th grader and this 8th grader. And so I knew he was gifted by that time. I didn't have to have anybody tell me that. Then spring break hit, and he got sick as a dog. He was so sick. He was using peeing in the bathroom every 10 minutes. And then the Friday after spring break, he started throwing up. He fell asleep on the sofa and woke up throwing up. And I called the doctor, and they said, get him to the hospital. We went to the hospital, and they looked, it was like instantaneously they said, he's got diabetes. And I'm like, no, no, because my granddaughter has diabetes. She was diagnosed at 4. No, please don't. We're going to add to his other problems. Now diabetes. He was in the hospital a week, and definitely he has diabetes. So schooling went on the back burner for about a month till we learned how to take blood, how to count carbs, how to give the shots, and it was a month we will none of us forget. A lot of tears cried, even by the big boys. I warned them in advance, you're going to feel neglected, but he's going to require a lot of one-on-one time. I saw how Charlie, that's my granddaughter, once she was diagnosed, how Brandon, what didn't get as much one-on-one with dad. I mean, good thing. I mean, he already had the algebra. Dad didn't have to. So Brandon could go on and teach himself. Uh, so I would just warn the boys: don't ever feel like mom and dad are giving him preference. But to keep him alive, they're going to have to give him more attention they give y'all. And we're going to do this together as a family. During that time, we found this place called Mathletics online. It is a wonderful place to go to supplement math, and you register them at their grade, and there's all they've got everything worked out into categories like geometry, this and this. Plus, we were supplementing with Kahns. All the public schools are using Kahns too. So Kahns is awesome, and you sign them up. It's free, and they can work at their own pace in their grade. And you have points you're trying to get to finish that grade. I started using it in economics and biology and history for the 8th grader because I didn't have all the public school books for him because he had been Zooming and they weren't using books. The teachers were copying things. So they found out that Mathletics honors Math Day with a worldwide competition that lasts 48 hours. They wanted to participate. They did some practice rounds. They saw how it worked, so they knew how to do it. And they were waiting the moment 2 o'clock came on that day to start doing Mathletics. And the first two, Toby and Nikki, finished really quickly. 10 games is all you're allowed to play. And you go head to head with kids from all over the world. And at the end of a minute, however many problems you got right, you'll get a placement. When you first click on start a game, you'll see this little thing go around and pick up flags from different countries, and that's who all you're competing against. So we started learning flags of all the countries. They started learning which countries gave them competition, which countries it didn't take them very long to figure out which countries they were going to beat. And so on the day of the actual contest that was going to count, they were waiting at 2 o'clock, and at 2 o'clock they went on. AJ was off at a play rehearsal, so he didn't do his at that time. And Nikki was using my computer that was not touchscreen, which put him at a disadvantage because touchscreen is much faster because they're going to flash the problems up and you're going to just type in the answer. Well, without a touchscreen, you have to do the number thing over here and over here up at the top, And since then, I made sure that they have touchscreen. Even if they don't get the number pad, they get a touchscreen. But now I try to make sure that they have a number pad too before they do the competition. Then AJ comes home and he starts doing it. And they finished, that afternoon. And of course, there's a running total there telling you where you are at that moment. Now, they told us there'd be 1.5 million contestants that year. And here are our results. AJ finished 28th in the United States and 762 out of the world. So, if there were 1.5 million that was competing and he finished 762, that was definitely the 99 percentile in the world. 28th in the United States. We don't know how many competed, but my church I was going to was bragging that their kids finished in the 50 percentile. And I knew that my kid probably finished in the 99 percentile. Okay. Nikki got 201 in the United States. But the first 12 hours of the competition, he led the world. And I told him, when you wake up in the morning, the Asians will have come on and you will be knocked down. And he was down to fifth place when he came in the next morning. And he ended up in the world at 2,689. Again, out of 1.5 million, that would still give him in the 99 percentile. But if you take that 1.5 million, divide it by 12 grades, and say that maybe they're just giving you your standing by your grade, then if I divide it by 12, however many that would be for all the boys, these are what they finished up at. AJ 99.24 in the world, Nikki 97.4 in the world, and Toby finished at 98.5 in the world. He finished 47th in the United States, 1,475 in the world. Okay, by the next year, they said there'd be 5 million contestants. She had grown from 1.5 to 5 million. Nikki finished 31st in the United States and 1,339 out of the world. If you divide the 5 million into 12 grades, he finished at the 98 percentile in the world, 98 percentile. And they gave me these numbers that during his 10 games, he answered 8,513 problems right, and he played 185 games. And remember, those are 1-minute games. And his high score was 67 problems worked in a minute. And his average overall, the 10 games, was 50 problems per minute. He broke his up into 2 days because he wanted to be fresh. So he did 5 and then he did 5. Toby, on the other hand, wanted to get it over with because I told him if he broke it up, he said, what subject will I not get tomorrow? I said, well, we'll probably do it during math. Oh no, I don't want to miss math, so I'll just go ahead. Well, he had just come off of a really hard physical therapy session with his therapist, so he got slower as he went. I watched him, but he ended up 95th in the United States and 1,613th in the world. So out of 5 million, that's the 95 percentile. And they said he answered 3,250 right. He played 154 games. His high score was 52 problems in a minute, and his average was 37. So I've got a 98 percentile and I got a 95 percentile. So going on, this year I just had Toby. And they said they were going to have 10 million contestants this year. And Toby finished up 236th in the United States and 1,996 out of 10 million kids. Or if you divide the 10 million by 12 grades, that's 833,333 contestants his age. And that would put him at the 99.991 percentile. Now that's a special group of kids on IQ tests and achievement tests. The 99.9 is called the triple nines, and they're called profoundly gifted. And in uh, the year before, it was 99.7. Yeah, so he went up zero point 0.2. No, the 99.7 is taking the 10 million, the 833.3 comma 333, 833, 333, and the 10 million is 99.991. Okay, either way, he's right up there, close to as high as you can get. Last year, I gave him the Iowa skills test, and he finished, and they do have a ceiling at overall fifth grade, fifth month at the end of second grade. And, uh, but his math score was up in 11th grade. This year, I gave him the Stanford 10. They start third grade. And so the Stanford 10, this year, there are 9 subjects they tested. Um, 7 of the 9, he scored almost perfect. Yeah, I think science, he made it 1 error, and history 2. Perfect on math, perfect on vocabulary, perfect on spelling. And overall, his percentage was 99. You know, they won't give you 100, but I don't know how many kids that is. So 99 is the highest they will ever show your percentile on a Stanford 10. Uh, but they gave a grade equivalent. Like if a person of a different grade took their test, they would make the same score you did. His basic battery was 11th grade, 8th month, and his complete thing was post high school in math, post high school in computation, post high school in spelling, vocabulary. The only ones that he wasn't that high was language and reading comprehension. And I looked at the language test, and it blew my mind. It wasn't what we call language. It was 4 sentences and you pick the best sentence. I think that's pretty subjective, but he finished grade level, so I'm okay. On the reading, he got kicked off. He is a diabetic, had to go to the bathroom. He gets no notice. It hits, he's got to go. He hit the pause button, and instead, it took him out of the program. They said if you leave the program during the test, you don't get credit for any of those. But I have warned them about his problem, and they said they would get us back in if that happened. It happened. They got us back in, but I asked him, how many problems did you still have to do before you went to the bathroom? He said 8. I had them all but 8. When the test results came back, 8 is what he missed. So I think would have made 100 on reading comprehension because he's reading at like an 8th grade level most things. I mean, he's an awesome reader. He reads with lots of expression and he reads my teacher's books, dadgummit. So at the end of third grade, he was a grade equivalent, 11.8, 11th grade, 8th month. So, and post high school in math. So that is a recommendation for Saxon Math and for gifted children. Maybe not, maybe it doesn't work quite as well for a normal kid, but it sure worked my classrooms. We won Math Olympics every year. I told you once I changed to the Saxon Math. So I'm a firm believer in Saxon Math. All right. Now I'm going to show you the color math, which I think really helped Toby. The 4th grade color math is equivalent to the Saxon 6.5 and 7.6, I think. Pretty much it's very, very advanced. And we used it off and on this year. When I got tired of the format of Saxon, I'd give him a break from that format and we'd do 4th grade. And when he got tired of 4th grade format, he'd say, it's time to go back to Saxon, Nana. He really loves Saxon. In the color math, you've got a teacher's manual. And in the teacher's manual, it tells you step by step what you're going to need, what you're going to want to do, what to say. That's your answer key right there. You see that? I'm not talking when I put it up there because I noticed in the last video you can't hear me if I do. And then this is the pupil's workbook. As you can tell, it looks pretty much like the teacher's book, so you got to pay attention. That one says teachers. This one says workbook. And the picture you saw in the teacher's book is exactly the same thing. Now see, it gets into a lot of geometry. It starts out with the speed test. I'll show you that book in a minute. And then you have just regular computation. Every day you start off with computation up here. And then this one is rounding. And this one is using your geo boards. And so he got to use the geo boards and then draw what he was supposed to draw here. I mean, count how many areas. It's reinforcing geometry. And then down here is range, median, mode. For minutes it took groups of animals to travel 3 feet. Earlier in the book, you did temperatures. You did just simple multiplication. You did a subtraction up here with borrowing. Decimals from fractions. See, that's why I say it's advanced. Decimals in 4th grade. Public school, you do not touch decimals till 5th grade. I know, because I was a 5th grade teacher. All right. They do a lot of patterning, and he loves to pattern anything. So they do that. All right. And there is no homework. It's just one. That's lesson 25. That's lesson 26. 1 page. You're through. But it's a lot of activities with the resource kit and manipulatives. And he loves manipulatives. He gets to the floor and he does those. You start the lesson, though, before you get to your workbook, with this book. See if I can find it. The front of it. Response book. You've got this thing here. It's clear plastic. You've got these things here. These colored things here. Each day is something different. Maybe addition, maybe subtraction. I read out of the teacher's book the problem fast. And he puts the answers coming down. So it will tell them which form and which color to use. And then you've got 2 pages of these, and they last 2 weeks, see? And then it's dry erase off of here. They use a dry erase marker on this. Yeah. So that's your speed test every day for listening. Remember at Saxon, you had the pink thing at the top where I would read the problem and he'd do it mentally. This is your mental math here, but it's more like a mad minute mental math. And we have not got to this yet, but these are practices. And I think the second half of the book, we actually will get into that. But, oh no, we had gotten into it. I'm sorry. I just didn't have it there. No, those are the answers to those others, the forms. Let me see where these begin. I don't want to lie to you, but I don't remember getting it. It's called the Response Book Multiplication and Division Mastery section. They're going to have it's auditory also. And then you get to these. So those more like the mad minutes that you have with Saxon. that's in that pull-out book. So I would say fourth grade, if you've got an advanced kid, would work for you and later on too, And so we just use it to break up the monotony of doing the Saxon format all the time. And I thought he would really, really, really enjoy all that patterning and getting to use his geo boards and things like that. Because by sixth grade and seventh grade in Saxon, there's not near as much manipulative work as there was in the grade two and the grade three, kindergarten through third grade. And he really, really loves to use his hands and build things. And so that's my little genius boy. That's what his diabetic doctor calls him, is her genius patient, because he's in that 99.9 percentile. And I'm going to stop there. And part three, I'll talk about Nikki, who's also gifted. Like I told you, all six of my grandkids are gifted. All three of my children were gifted. And they tell me that it's genetic and that if you have a gifted child, you were gifted. I don't. We didn't have those labels back in the 1950s, but they did ask me to skip second grade and go to third. And I was already reading encyclopedias before I started school. We didn't have kindergarten, we just started in the first grade. So I'm assuming I probably am gifted too. I've got all the problem issues they have, and I will get into that on one called Giftedness, where I tell you it's sometimes a hardship being gifted. It's not a gift. If you're a normal gifted, um, you will be identified at school, and they will say, well, you're smart, you get along with everybody, you're a leader. But if you go above into that 97 up to the high 99.9s, you have a lot of issues, and I'll explain why with a bell curve when we get to the gifted part. But my mama skipped grades, and our DNA shows that we are related to Ben Franklin, and we all know he was gifted because we have bifocals and we have lightning rods for our house because of him. So uh, I think it didn't show up with me, the issues that these kids have on social interaction with others, because all I was interested in was basketball, and my middle child was that way. He was always athletic. We did the best we could to maintain our grades so we could play. We could play our sport. I drifted through school, never had to study, and was always one of the top students. One valedictorian or anything, because I didn't try to be. But my college did have to change their grading system once I got there because I reached the A level in 2 weeks. So they revamped their grading system, and they put me based on my college entrance test in all A classes. That's what they were called back then, not gifted. You're in A classes in college, uh, which I was a country bumpkin, knew nothing about what was going on. It didn't matter to me, you know. I just it's just a label that I didn't need and I didn't really want. But back in September, my grandson Brandon, really gifted, looked at me and said, I figured it out. We had to have inherited all this giftedness among all of us. It came from you. And I said, what makes you think that? He said, because you're the smartest adult I know besides dad. And you're the one that teaches everybody. And I went, So I got introspected on my way home, thinking about things, and I decided he's right. Well, I didn't have the label, but I probably was. And once you was, you still are. It's just that I'm 72 years old and I think like a 72-year-old person now. And Linda Silverman, who is a specialist in it, I watch her conferences. She says, how many of you have gifted children? The whole room will raise their hand. How many of you are gifted? Nobody will raise their hand. And she'll say, they must have been delivered, you must have adopted them then, or they were delivered by a stork, because if you have gifted children, you're gifted. And she opened my eyes. I had all the issues the kids do. Well, I'm coming up on an hour, so I better shut up. get out of here. I hope you have a great Sunday. And I probably won't get this on here today, but I only got the last Sunday's one on yesterday. So I'll give y'all a break. And next time, we'll talk more about Kahns and Mathletics, maybe, unless I decide to talk about something else. All right. See you later. Tell your friends and y'all hit subscribe or like. It will be easier to find me next time if I get some people watching. But being new to YouTube, it doesn't come on very easy. You have to pretty much say, let's talk math, Nana Judy's homeschooling to get it to pop up. Okay? All right. Bye-bye. See you next time.